Hi everybody, I'm Dr. Deed Harrison here of Chiropractic BioPhysics Seminars and Technique and Chiropractic BioPhysics Nonprofit, our spine research organization. We always have new guests, exciting information, brand new research, and clinical practice tidbits for you guys out there. Welcome to the Chiropractic BioPhysics podcast.
Hey, here we are again, Chiro United podcast. I don't know if it's three doctors or three stooges sometimes, but here we are, Dr. Deed Harrison, Dr. Joe Ferrantelli, and me, Fred DiDomenico, and we're here. Hey, we got requests at the annual to start picking up some studies. Yep, we hear you. We get your feedback. Had to go through the annual stuff, so we'll get back on track, crack a few jokes, maybe cover a study, talk about what's really screwed up in the world. The WTF is going on in chiropractic, and here we go. I guess we'll take it from there.
Nice to see you guys again.
Yeah, you guys too. Well, what's irritating is, come on, I mean, we actually went through studies, just laying out what was, done at the annual. It's all research. I mean, what do they want? You know what I mean?
More demands.
Well, yeah. Here's the messed up thing, guys, and I mean, we're all working our butts off, but literally there's something fishy going on up in Canada right now. I don't know the whole details, but we might want to get Dr. Pascal Brenton or Dr. Brad Gage on, because there's something going on again in Canada where there's a movement from a certain political party and group trying to, I don't know, do something to restrict X-ray again. And Pascal sent it to me. And this week, I literally just had no time to look at it, even though I really try to help everybody internationally. But I'm trying to get this Journal of Clinical Medicine special issue laid out, and I talked about that, last time. But it's so important, it's so big. People don't realize what it takes to do one peer-reviewed paper, let alone 25. And I bring this up because I'll talk about something that's important in this, special issue. People want research. The reality of it is, it's like they get so used to us being so productive that they actually kind of almost immune to the fact that research is very difficult, right? And I'm saying this with a smile because, it's like if they tried to do one paper, it would be one a year. And here our team, collectively we're putting, 15 to 25 papers out. And, when you do that, you just don't have much time.
Yeah, so, it's like a thesis statement. So like people getting a PhD, one paper is like a thesis.
Yeah.
So you're actually getting about 25 PhDs, Deed, per year.
Kind of. I mean, I'm sitting on a lot of data just because there's always so much to do, and I'm never caught up. And I literally dropped the ball on a couple really important projects that it's rare that I really, really screw up, but when I do, I own up to it. I screwed up with a couple key projects with Ibrahim and his wife Aaliyah and the team, and I'm working hard on getting those done. So just this week, you guys, I submitted two full-scale randomized trials to the Journal of Clinical Medicine, and wow. Yeah, one of them is pretty well. They're all important, but one of them is one that we had done in 2019, and I presented it at the PT conference in 2020 in January in Denver, right before the pandemic hit, and it kind of shut down that whole publication. I submitted it to a couple journals, and there were some technical issues with it that I had to fix up, and it never got accepted. And it wasn't anything bad. It was just a couple of them didn't fit the criteria for the journal, right. And on. And then there's trial registry issues that around the world, different countries have different registration requirements. And in Europe, trials didn't have to be formally registered until just recently, legally. They just had to be approved through the university. And I say this because, this project that I just submitted today, is a randomized trial on thoracic hyperkyphosis and reducing it with conservative care methods with the dental roll. And we had the abstract, the short version of the paper, published in the proceedings of the PT conference. And Joe, you were at that conference.
Yep.
And there's 10,000 PTs and PhDs there.
Yeah, it's I forget what they call it, but it's the biggest conference of the year for physical therapy.
Yeah, right. And so we have, it's preliminarily peer reviewed in an abstract format, and you can look that up in the I think the supplementary issue of the JOSPT, Journal of Orthopedic and Sports Physical Therapy. And I think it's the January or February supplemental issue. And so I can talk about the paper from that regard, but I just formally submitted it today. And I still think that it's the largest conservative care correction in hyperkyphosis that's been truly identified in the literature that doesn't use bracing or surgery. And these people had, quite large thoracic kyphosis on X-ray. We don't know because we didn't take X-rays in the paper. We did, the external measurement, Joe, that you're working on with posture screen. We used a formetric measurement, and the formetric measurement, when you read the literature, basically overestimates the thoracic kyphosis by 7 to 10 degrees. So we found like an 82-degree formetric measurement, 82 degrees. And so you got to look at that and go, well, that's like a 72-degree true X-ray measured thoracic kyphosis. That's huge, right?
Yeah, it is. And what was the age group? Because wouldn't they have deformation of the thoracic vertebrae? I mean, that's pretty tough to correct.
Yeah, we're looking at an older, not seniors, but middle-aged adult population between, I believe it was 45 and 55, where most people fell. And that, there was a couple outliers, but we're talking about, middle-aged dudes like ourselves.
Yeah. That is extreme. I mean, I'm thinking that's young.
Yeah.
I was on a coaching call the other day and they were talking about this patient. Well, it's a much older patient, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, how old? Just getting an idea how I was going to answer their question. He's like 63.
Right.
Now, my birthday is 62 next, here in a few months.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah. So anyway, it's hell getting old, right? I mean, it's all perspective. It's mindset. And I know you don't feel that age. I don't feel 50. I mean, I look at people that look 50 and they're all crippled and,
Exactly.
I'm like, man, I got to be 35.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that amount of hyperkyphosis at that young age is huge. Like
right.
That's a problem. There's other problems there.
Yeah, it's serious. And, when you equate it to studies in the literature on hyperkyphosis and mortality, that magnitude of kyphosis is actually in the range that has a risk of probability of early death. There's six different papers that suggest that range of kyphosis, predicts early mortality once you get to the 6th decade of life and up. So, I mean, we're talking about people in this conservative care trial that are close to that age range, 60 and up, not quite, but that they have the kyphosis magnitude that's a serious risk. Anyway, what we did in the project is we looked at people that had hyperkyphosis and chronic neck pain. And, the reason we do that is, Fred, you teach people are a full spine condition. They're not a sectional condition. And that fits right in with CBP and research over the decades, but it doesn't fit in with insurance companies' reimbursement and IME's version of, neck pain. So somebody comes in with neck pain, check their neck, right? Well, this trial, we looked at neck pain that may be driven by thoracic hyperkyphosis.
Right.
So the people in the trial had what we called chronic non-specific neck pain with, alteration of range of motion. And then we looked at sensory motor control measurements. We looked at head repositioning accuracy, the balance plate stability under different perturbations. And then we looked at the smooth pursuit neck torsion test for ocular motor control, right? So the only thing we didn't look at in this trial was the autonomic nervous system. We elected not to. We did neck pain, neck disability, thoracic kyphosis externally, and then we did sensory motor control measurements. And we did two groups of matched individuals, 40 and 40, and we looked at what treatment outcomes are. So we did standard care, which standard care is exercise and generalized PT and mobilization and manipulation. And then we did the same thing and added the thoracic Deneroll. And when people hear us talking about the Deneroll, they think we're selling a product. We're not selling a product. We're testing a device that's known to create localized 3-point bending extension traction. And, we choose the Deneroll because it's easier to use in a controlled clinical environment. We don't have to worry about how much force a therapist may be applying with traction loads because everybody's supine lying on their back.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to worry about placement location, which we test the reliability of, the ability to place it in the mid-lower thoracic spine. And then we just look at time. So that's why we use the Deneroll as the extension traction. And, people got to realize you can replace the Deneroll with anything that does a similar thing with extension 3-point bending traction. So we did our treatment program 3 times a week for 10 weeks, 30 sessions. Then we looked at them short term and then followed them for a year. And again, this is all in the JOSPT abstracts of that PT conference because the formal paper is just actually in review today,
Because you're working hard at it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what we found of interest, if you look at all of our other papers that we've done with one exception, and I'll go through that too, because people irritated me. They said we didn't do research in this podcast. So we'll give them research, right?
I love it.
Right. So it's like this particular trial is the first time at 10 weeks that we actually found a difference in neck disability and neck pain between the groups. Most of the time in our trials, when we're treating the neck for neck pain, we find out
pretty much the same.
Yeah, we find out after 30 visits that neck pain and disability are both improved in both groups. And so there's no group differences at the 10-week mark, whereas we find postural and other differences, right? Well, this one, we found true curve differences at 10 weeks, but we also found it had a profound effect on neck pain and disability, which really suggests that the thoracic curve is really a very important driver of chronic neck pain and disability, right? To see the early change, because both groups are getting, care, but to see early difference between the two groups is pretty profound. So that was one thing. And then at long-term follow-up, we see very big differences between the two groups in all the measurements: thoracic kyphosis, neck pain, neck disability, and all the sensory motor control measurements, to where we found at 1 year follow-up, we found a 16 to 18 degree range of thoracic correction.
Wow, that's huge.
In the
that's without doing anything in the there's no maintenance care or maintenance Deneroll in that follow-up.
That's right. They're doing a few exercises at home that we allow both groups to do, and we monitor them weekly.
Right, but no Deneroll.
No Deneroll at home. They're not doing that.
So
how
it's
many
a true
times
correction.
did they on the Deneroll in that study?
3 times a week for 10 weeks. So 30 sessions.
And about, because the chiros are thinking as well, they want to know what's the average time they worked up to.
Yeah, so we start pretty fast in these trials. It's under supervision, and they're getting a lot of intervention too. This is why it's not just done at home. It's a multimodal procedure. And, so they're getting a lot of interventions, and then they're doing the Deneroll. We start them at 3 minutes, and we build up every session to where they're doing 15 to 20 minutes. And if you've ever tried to lie on the thoracic Deneroll, you understand that 15 to 20 minutes.
It's a hell of a long time. Yeah, that's you, Joe, with your compression fracture, right?
Yeah. Well, you know, what's ironic about it, Deed, is it actually, for me, because I can speak as somebody that would be a subject of your papers in this realm from all the powerlifting and compression fractures that I have. For me, getting past like the first 3 to 5 minutes after that, it's actually relaxing. And since I'm a middle-aged man, when I go to get off of it, you know, I can tell that change has occurred. And you know, I've done all types of traction, but I can tell you the thoracic dental roll is pretty aggressive. And you know, from anybody that's treated patients with it, you just can't start anybody on the regular thoracic dental roll. You have to work them up to it typically. So, but I love it. And the thing that Fred would like to know about it is I can breathe much better right afterwards. And it's exactly what our patients would tell you. And it makes perfect sense too, you know, that you could breathe better afterwards. So I just wanted to put in my own little personal, you know, stamp on that as somebody that has a hyperkyphosis.
Well, in some, you know, I've had trauma. Well, I've had full spine trauma, but aside from that, man, I know when my neck is starting to lock up, I need a thoracic adjustment. So talking about the thoracic spine being a driver for the cervical, and I mean the effect on lumbar spine, right? I mean, it can drive the whole spine. But I know when my neck starts locking up, I can release my thoracics without even touching my neck. But also with that hyperkyphotic spine, I mean, the normal coupling pattern is more hyperkyphotic goes into a forward head posture.
Right.
Sure, you probably didn't measure that, but it would have been interesting to see with 16, 18 degree correction, how much was the forward head posture automatically corrected?
Yeah, that's a limitation in the trial. We didn't look at that, but we actually looked at that in a very different trial that I won't go through this time. I'll go through next time.
Yeah, we got to have a teaser for him.
Right. So there, you know, there's a limitation. Everything we didn't measure the cervical vertebral angle for head posture in this trial. You know, we should have, but we didn't. And you know, likely speaking, the magnitude of kyphosis that we showed corrected of 18 degrees. And I say 16 to 18 because it's 1 year versus the 10-week outcomes. We lost a couple degrees there, but I'm sure that there was head posture correction that occurred too. But it was, you know, driven either way. It's driven by targeting the thoracic kyphosis and not targeting the neck. Yeah.
Well, that was the purpose of the study. So
yeah, and it goes a long way to look at several things. You know, number one, chiropractors always get attacked and criticized by the insurance industry and, you know, outsiders for trying to do full spine work, you know, trying to look at the whole system when, you know, now other things are starting to catch up to us that it is a whole system. Right. So this paper will help to address, you know, that, hey, that the neck is influenced by the thoracic spine. And then, you know, Joe, you talked about respiratory issues and breathing. You know, we didn't look at that. We need to. These are limitations, but at least we looked at, you know, head repositioning. We looked at ocular motor control and balance. So we're trying to be more sophisticated and not just look at neck pain and disability. We're trying to truly measure functional outcomes. And that's what the team over at Cairo University and the United Arab Emirates, they're so good at. They're so skilled. They think and they see that these are important things, and they know it's more than neck pain and disability. And I think that's why Ibrahim and I and his team, we just fit so well together because we look at it as a holistic system. It truly is to us visceral and organ and function and neurology, but we're trying to break it down and see, well, how much of each component is influenced or may be influenced by certain regions and certain alignment. And so far, damn, I mean, we're finding out it's connected, you know?
Yep. And with this paper, you said you did thoracic mobilization and manipulation as well in both groups.
Yeah, we did I'm going to have to, I've submitted 4 papers in the last 2 weeks, and I've written so many.
And Fred, basically what he's saying is he's older and can't remember is what he's trying to say.
I'm 50 now, so I get an excuse. I'm trying not to swear or use the C7 dermatome towards you guys.
Yeah, I know people picked up on your C7 dermatome.
Yeah, but we did actually, I'm reading the abstract now just to make sure we did actually do mobilization and manipulation. So it's truly, like anterior dorsals, you would say. And so, that's an important type of, thrust and issue. So, the person's in the supine position with their arms crossed and you thrust. And that's the way I always manipulated the thoracic spine. And so, this might frustrate chiropractors because on one hand, we're saying that spine manipulative therapy is not changing the thoracic curve. On the other hand, we're saying we used it. It helps people temporarily, but we are saying that it does not correct the true thoracic hyperkyphosis. I mean, that's it, it's not just us saying it, it's what we're finding.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's force over time. Of course, you're not going to change the ligaments and the discs with just a manipulation. But for whatever reason, I mean, there's it's not just the chiropractors, but physical therapists think the same thing too. So it's important that we publish this because it's important. We're not saying by any means, or you're not saying, because I wasn't on the study, that the manipulation is not valuable or the adjustment or mobilization. It's not valuable. It is.
Yeah.
We're just saying that you need to add something to it in these cases. You just can't do, a high velocity thrust and make a permanent change. While that has a good short-term effect, it's not going to have long-term consequences on their health unless we change that permanent alignment against gravity.
Yeah, and that's so true. And then, the reality of it is, we go through evidence in this paper. Like always, my job's to throw in some extra research because I got to keep up on this. And yeah, spine manipulation and exercise, they do change the thoracic curve, but not to the extent that people claim.
Yeah, it's small.
It's 3 to 5 degrees. And when you look at these trials on exercise, they kind of misrepresent them. And I read a bunch of them, and I read meta-analyses, and the way they report it, they forget to report the absolute number unless you dig through the actual paper. And how many people are going to read the actual paper? Number one, most of the time you have to purchase it. So how many people are going to pay the $40 to get the full article? And then I do. And, my bookkeeper can attest that I spend thousands of dollars every year on purchasing articles. Thousands.
Right. And the other part too, Deed, is most times we're using the Cobb method of analysis if it's on X-ray and not using the posterior tangent analysis to be able to show that. So they would probably see less change if they used a more reliable and valid method of the thoracic kyphosis. Yeah.
And a lot of them are only, like we did, they're only reporting external, and external has a little bit bigger standard error of measurement than X-ray. It's, you got to be above that 3 to 5 degree mark to really claim externally, true valid change. So, our paper has limitations. We didn't take X-rays. We didn't look at head and neck alignment, but the change we got is so much bigger than the standard error of measurement. And it's so much bigger than the standard deviation of the mean, mean value and standard deviation of the population we looked at. The change is bigger than that. So we call the effect size Cohen's D. We call it a very large D. So Cohen has a large D.
Nice. For a Jewish guy.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding. That's funny. Well, going back to your segmental adjusting, Joe, and obviously any mechanical thrust into the spine stimulates the nervous system, goes through the cerebellum, stimulates the autonomic nervous system. I mean, the principle is a principle, right? But when you're talking about curve changes, and now, it's the research too is curve and cord. Like the old model of segment bone on nerve is very limited. It's not the whole story. I mean, obviously you can have some segmental adjustments, especially with ligament injuries and things like that. But really, even medicine, medical studies, the relationship between curve and cord. Indeed, you've done that when you flex the neck and measure the H reflex and show the cord velocity, the neurological impulse velocity. And that's really what it is. So to stick to that old model is incomplete.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the take home point, like you're saying too, is that this is something that, any chiropractor can use tomorrow if they learn the basics and the indications and contraindications of using the Denerol. They could add this to their practice, even if they're not yet CBP trained per se. They can take some of the classes online, but they can learn how to use the Denerol specifically, add it to what they're doing. So that's the biggest thing, that why I love what your father did, Deed, was it can take any chiropractor, and this brings it to the next level with CBP. It doesn't mean if you're a Gonstead adjuster, great, continue doing what you want to do, and then add the rehab component to it. Or if you're, an upper cervical doc, add the rehab component to it, and you'll just get much better, longer lasting changes, which is what the research is showing.
Right, exactly, Joe. And these studies, if you look at them, they're multimodal programs. They're in the outpatient department, done by trained therapists that have 10 plus years of experience. And, we're not just saying, hey, use this at home and it cures everything. And that's what the IMEs try to do. They try to say, well, this paper shows that the Denerol is what makes the change, so do it at home. And then, I come on as the author and I go, you've entirely fabricated a lie of this project. It had nothing to do with they did this at home. They did it under direct supervision, right? Now, will we prescribe it to them at home? Yes, but we are managing them in the office too. And that's a huge part of these trials that, the chiropractors need to understand so they can, defend themselves, unfortunately, when it arises, because that, you got to realize the IMEs out there that work for the insurance industry, their job is not to pay bills, in my opinion. Their job, in my opinion, what I've seen over the years, is to limit chiropractic care the best that they can and save the insurance companies money. And that's what my opinion of that is. Looking at this over the years, that's what they've been hired to do. And that's why, for me personally, I used to do a few things for insurance companies, and I never got invited back.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that. I was asked to do one, quote, independent medical exam for a PI case, and the same thing. I found that, and I didn't know the chiropractor at all. And what they did after going through the records and examining the patient, what they did was legit. And I wrote back saying that they actually needed more than what the chiropractor said to continue care.
Right.
And of course, I never got, asked to do another one again. But it was legit. It was the truth. And I just thought it was ironic. I knew nothing of this chiropractor. It wasn't a CBP doctor, but you could see they were doing a great job with their notes and everything like that. So you're right. There's a power that literally takes things out of context and tries to limit care. They do. And it's unfortunate because the patient loses.
Yeah. And it brings up one funny thing on our last podcast when we talked about the double arm, jab and the C7 dermatome. Susanna Listema and Monica Henshaw had watched it and made fun of that. Susanna used to actually work with Shirlene and I out in Elko, Nevada. So she was one of our early intern doctors, and now she's an amazing chiropractor, runs her own show up in Canada, and super great at CBP and chiropractic. But she may remember what I used to do on the insurance contracts that would get sent to me to sign up to be a provider and discount your care, and I would photocopy the C7 dermatome on the signature line and then have my receptionist send it back. and for some reason I quit getting those sign up to be a provider contracts.
Well, what's ironic about that, Deed, is that the young docs listening, they don't know what a fax machine is.
Yeah,
So.
right. Yeah, I have no idea. Yeah, it would be email or PDF document, whatever.
Yeah.
But, you get the idea. You can Photoshop your finger on it and send it back as a PDF if you want.
Yeah.
But
Or sit on your scanner and make a copy and send that over.
yeah, I thought that one would be too offensive. I might get brought up to the state board or something.
Right.
So
that might be over the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, back to the research stuff here, that it's so important to have these types of papers to show, or to identify, can we actually change the thoracic kyphosis, and does it improve people? And then is it stable, mostly stable over time? And, realize it's only a 1 year follow-up, and we lost a couple degrees at the 1 year. So you take that out 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you might now start to lose a lot more. And this brings up, Fred, what you talk about is, lifetime support.
Maintenance.
People have to stay active and stay doing the things that prevent them from going back to where they were.
Well, even if you started at 73 degrees and you get, 18 degrees, I mean, that's still a pretty hyperkyphotic spine. And you figure what lifestyle, what habits do they have that led to that? I mean, there's lots of things that lead to it, obviously. But, they're going to tend to be in a slouch posture. And how can you stop that? I mean, if you don't put them on some type of maintenance or whatever you want to call it, in Elite, we call it an optimal life plan. And here's a big clue for human behavior, since we kind of base all our communication. When you look at maintenance, one of the 6 human needs, the 5th human need is growth. So the problem when you say maintenance is that doesn't imply growth, and wellness can be a result. And so when you put a people, rather than call it maintenance, like we'll call it an optimal life plan, because that suggests a lifestyle mindset. When you say maintenance, you automatically take the growth out of it, and you'll have a percentage of people that will quit just because there's no growth involved.
It's kind of like for us crypto nerds out there, it's like kind of investing in gold. No growth. Right, Dave?
It's important. Like, Fred, these are things that a lot of people, including myself, we don't think about the semantics and how that psychologically is interpreted in the brain. And you're right. It's like, there's a way to word things to where people understand the necessity of this and connect to it. It's no different than, when somebody goes, oh, we need to drill for oil, versus, no, we're doing energy exploration. Right. So they mean the same thing in general, like, terms, but, specifically they have different, impacts in the brain.
One's sexier than another one.
Yeah.
Well, that's correct. And then, one of them goes, oh, okay, I can wrap my head around energy exploration for the future of mankind. Right. And the other one, drilling for oil, you come up with this, environmental toxicity and destruction of the, same kind of thing. Right. But, you're doing this appropriately for chiropractors to really get patients to, understand the need for long-term care.
Well, here's the difference too. Like when you let's use your example. Drill for oil is an act. Energy exploration is a purpose. And that's the highest human inspiration, right? That's why optimal life plan becomes a purpose. And you look as chiropractors, what do we do for purpose? I mean, look what you do, Deed. I mean, look what we all do for purpose, right? I mean, we bust our butt, man. We give up time with our family. I mean, it's why we do what we do. So that's really the key. And it's one of the things we teach at the boot camps is don't just create a patient that buys a product or service. Give them purpose to live their life differently. Then they'll bring their kids. They'll stay longer. And purpose is the highest human inspiration. So that's why words can imply purpose.
Yep. So true. Yeah. And this thing, the purpose and the passion that we have, I got to vent just a little bit, right?
Let us hear it, Deed. Let's hear it.
Nobody wants to hear this at home. The dog is tired of listening to me. Cheryl's tired of listening to me. No.
Hey, here's the mic, man. Let's have it.
So here, the thing is, if you've never submitted a paper to a peer-reviewed journal, they all have different formats, and they have different, you know, platforms you're submitting to. It's not just, you don't just take your paper, your Word document that has it all in there, all the figures and tables, and you don't just load it up. You don't do that. It is the most life-draining procedure that you could ever do as a human being. I mean, literally, to change your manuscript to a new journal format can take the better part of a whole day. And you might think it doesn't. I would just say, here, let me send one to you and you go through it. I mean, you wouldn't believe the difference between certain journals and certain this and that they want. And it's like, you know, part of me, like, I just want to slice my wrist open and just bleed out right here at the table or at the desk and go, Deed died doing what he loved, submitting to journals.
Yeah, I tell you what, if I had more time and more programmers, that would be a perfect thing to do, is design a interface for all researchers to go ahead and do one submission, and you could submit to any journal.
It would be amazing just to have the same platform, the same this, the same that. Now, they're kind of working on it with what they call, you know, not to bring up technical things, but they have ORCID numbers and Scopus links, and you can just put those in, and then it should populate your profile. Because like some journals, they want a 1,500 character bio, but another journal doesn't, or another journal wants 2,500. They want a bio of the author. So they, you know, then you have to, like, let's say the journal wants, instead of the 2,500, and that's what you have, a 1,500. Now you have
to edit it.
Oh my God, it's like, I don't want to, no. But then you don't get your paper in. So anyway, that's, you guys are feeling my pain for just this amazing trial that a chiropractor is going to glance over and read, you know, maybe the abstract, and they don't realize what I personally went through.
So it's much better for me to be a co-author on these upcoming papers that we're working on than to actually be the lead author and submitting it. Is that what you're saying to me?
I'm definitely saying that.
So what you're really saying is Cheryl has to listen to this every time you have to edit your bio.
She doesn't listen anymore. I don't even talk to her about it, because she's not, you know, and I can't blame her. It's not, you know, it's not that she's not supportive. It's just, you know, I wouldn't want to hear it either. I just decided to let the readers know. And here's why. It's because, you know, at the end of the day, we need support through CBP nonprofit. Like if you want this trial we're talking about, it's not formally published yet, only it's short, call it a short presentation, short article, short abstract. And yes, it's in a peer-reviewed forum, but it's not the full article. So it's a peer-reviewed conference, and then it's in a scientific journal as a supplement, right? You know, and if you want that, you can donate to CBP nonprofit. And Joe, you just built a whole system where when they become a member at cbpnonprofit.com, a dues-paying member, which is $100 a year, then they get access to all the PDFs of what we have. In this randomized trial, I sent you that abstract, and it should be in there.
Yeah, and so what we're doing, so if you go to cbpnonprofit.com/membership, you can go ahead and sign up there. And there's also, once you have a membership, you can log in there and go into your portal and then go into member docs and be able to basically search through criteria, whatever you're looking for. So if it's scoliosis or hyperkyphosis, you just type that in. There's a special area. I'm going to actually make a tutorial video, because the company we worked with, they're growing with this area. So they definitely have to work on some features with it, but everything's there. It's functional. You know, and it's something that it is super useful, because before, when they would donate, we'd give them a CD that yours truly would make, and there was no search capability. And so that was okay when we only had 10, 15, 20 papers, maybe 50 papers. But now over 300, it becomes quite, you know, hard to find them. So the search works great. And then you have the PDF right there, you know.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I also want to say this too, like you guys know this, but in case my colleagues over in Egypt and at the United Arab Emirates, they hear me talking like this. It's my part of the workload oftentimes to submit these papers. Of course I'm involved with the project, but I'm not there doing the treating. So I'm not supervising the day in, day out data collection, all that, which is a huge responsibility and a lot more time than sitting in front of a computer for a day and submitting. So I want to throw that out there too, as I, joke and I make my life look like it's miserable. It's not. It's my responsibility as part of the team. I try to take that task on when I can. And not always am I the submitting author, but when I am, I beg for a platform that's just universal, right? Anyway, yeah, because it can literally suck the life out of you as you're submitting your paper for just to review, review.
Right.
So you can just drink that life right back into you, can't you?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing with this right here. This glass of wine is I'm rehydrating my life energy after submitting, and hopefully it'll be, it's going to go through review, and hopefully the review comes back favorable, and on this project gets in the scientific literature in a top tier journal. It's needed, right? It'll be the first randomized trial that we've done on thoracic hyperkyphosis reduction.
Yeah. Wow. It's awesome.
And after all that work, man, when you see it get published and, the thing comes out, man, what a reward that must be. That must be amazing because, the blood, sweat, and tears that went into it.
It is. And you know what? What's really kind of, it's not sad. I don't want to say, but it's difficult because my colleagues are overseas and I don't get to interact with them on, a physical basis. So we celebrate via an email exchange or a Facebook Messenger exchange. And, I wish we could, celebrate with a hug and a beer or whatever it was. I don't even know if Professor Mustafa drinks a beer, but if he did, I would share a beer with him.
Yeah.
And just to, celebrate, because, after a while you tend to get immune to what you've done, but you shouldn't, because every paper that we're producing, it's a serious game changer for, the scientific community that's interested in spine rehabilitation. Some more than others, but this one will be a really important addition to the scientific literature, and it's something to be celebrated.
Absolutely. So, I know this is dumb, but don't you guys get on Zoom or something? You don't get on video together?
Yeah, we've done that, but it's easier to just email back and forth, just because of the time change.
Right.
Because it's what, 8-9 hour difference for me, and then he's full professor now and acting chair of the department, so he's got a huge workload. So it's just his time at the end of the day versus my time. It's just different schedules, so it's way easier to send messages back and forth. Yeah. And then anyway, but that when that comes out, and I promised a second paper, we're not going to talk about it, but I'm going to let the reader or the listener, know what we're going to talk about next week. We're going to talk about a true, or in 2 weeks, whatever it is, a true independently done randomized trial on the cervical dental roll that identified nearly the same findings that we've found, actually better findings in the short term than we found. And it's a true independently done project where we just supplied the dental rolls. That's it. They had access to the cervical dental rolls, and no funds, no this, no that, just here's dental rolls. And this was published in the Journal of Medical Sciences in 2018. So we'll talk about that maybe next time to give people some insight, which is an amazing thing, because we get accused of, well, there's no independent work, deeds on all the studies, which I'm not. Like, if you look at cbpnonprofit.com, there's roughly 30% of them that I'm not an author on. And then there's several randomized trials that I'm not an author on with Ibrahim and Aaliyah and their colleagues. And then there's this one that's not affiliated with any of us.
Mm-hmm.
And they've all found the same thing. So you can't use the, oh, it's bias and agenda because Deed's always on the paper, or, and unfortunately, one of the most insulting, derogatory things I've ever heard that made me seriously mad. And, when I get character attacks, I don't care, whatever. I'm like, whatever, because you're nobody. You know what I mean? In my mind, I'm like, I don't care. You're nobody to me. But when you attack my colleagues, that's a different thing, because I have high admiration and respect for them. One person actually said, well, you can't trust anything that those guys do overseas because they're on Deed's payroll. And I'm like, really? There has never been an exchange of monetary value ever. The only thing that's been exchanged is dental rolls. Like, here's a box of dental rolls shipping to you. That's the exchange. And then CBP nonprofit pays for the open access journal publication. I mean, that's not nobody's on anybody's payroll whatsoever. And so I remember the guy that said that to me. I didn't do it on Facebook, but I sent him a private message that I hope he didn't screen capture, because it could make me look pretty bad.
Yeah, and one can kind of do some homework and look at the UAE and realize they probably, are not doing this for the money.
Right. Right. There's none of that.
Right, exactly. So they're doing it for the greater good and for the right purpose. It basically just goes to show that people will speak and do things, and it's easy to hide behind a keyboard when they can't confront or talk to you in person, just like anything else. People say that about everything. So
it is, and again,
it gets irritating, to say the least. I get.
When it's about me or you two, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
But when it's about, people that work with us out of the goodness of their hearts, and they're, high quality, high caliber people that are doing this for the love of doing it, I do take that personally. And, anyway, but that's a side note. And, we all know that, we don't do this for the money. I mean, chiropractors make money, and chiropractic products make money without ever doing a single trial ever. Right. I mean, at this point, we could stop totally, and then people would go, wow, they've done a lot. We could stop. Like, people go, why do you keep doing what you do, Fred? Why do you keep doing what you do, Joe? Why do I keep doing what I do? I mean, is one more paper going to change the world? And you know what? The answer is, I don't know. It might.
Yeah. It depends who reads it. That's right. What that thing depends who reads it.
Right.
Yep.
It might change somebody's world.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yep. And then, through that, like you always say, Fred, it's, if it changes a chiropractor's world and they change, and then imagine how many people they interact with and they change their lives through corrective care, then, I mean, you're talking about a lot of people.
Absolutely.
Plus, you can't hunt the other 11 months of the year.
Right.
You need a hobby. It just happens to be you do a lot of studies.
Right.
A hunter that also does chiropractic, that also does studies.
Right. Yeah, we got to have something to do outside of the 1.5 months for hunting. But you know what? People like Miles Fortner would disagree. I mean, that guy, he bear hunts, he turkey hunts, he this hunts, he that hunts. There's a season for everything. Right. Like I said to him, when are you going to have kids? He goes, well, the problem is I can't have kids because they might be born during hunting season.
Yeah, nice.
And that's all year long.
That's awesome.
Right.
Yeah. And, we'll never forget the fire story with you and Miles. The unexpected wildfire, almost death experience.
Yeah.
Well, it's crazy, but that's how, relationships are built. Like, as chiropractors, we're people too. And we want to interact with our brothers and sisters and connect with them. And, some you connect with more than others, but you want to connect with everybody and get to know who they are and have a personal relationship. And unfortunately, I almost had too close of a personal relationship with Miles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Funny.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, hey, I think that's a wrap for today, unless you guys want to.
Yeah, well, you covered some studies for all those that were asking for some studies. So I think that was great, Deed. It definitely, that people look forward to it, So other than that, Deed, I think CBP has a seminar coming up for the week long. I don't know if there's any seats still available for that or not on September 24th.
Yeah. The cool thing is, Fred and I, we were just talking, ChiroFest with Dr. Paul Reed. Unfortunately, I think this will be too late before it comes out, but is this weekend in Boise. I get to have the honor of speaking. I'm going to be covering some cool new papers, and actually this one is part of my presentation. So we have that. Fred and I get to see each other this weekend here in Boise for Paul Reed's ChiroFest, and then the CBP week long, the general certifications right after that. We have a pretty full house. I think we have 50 to 52 people, and quite frankly, I don't know if I want any more. So, the max is 60, but that's hard to handle. So 50 is really good. And Fred, you're coming out. You're speaking at that event on one of the Thursdays. I believe you're coming out, right?
Yep.
So we should have a great crew of 50 docs and students out. And then Joe, you're coming out, right?
Yeah, I'll be there in the beginning, probably through Wednesday, I believe.
Okay.
So I'll actually be there for the start of it, or somewhat start of it.
Imagine you being present on the day that I teach X-ray and posture.
You would think that may have something to do with my company, but you do a much better job at teaching it. So I come in, afterwards, after they understand how hard it is to do it all by hand.
Yeah, I mean,
but I'll be there this time.
Thank God. I mean, it would be good to actually have a company there that had X-ray and posture products that go along with what I'm lecturing on.
That would be true, and we actually have. I'll be able to show off the lateral lumbar computer vision and how that will assist everybody with using posture as well too. So we got some great things to show. And who knows, I might actually teach a little bit.
Always a surprise at the weekend.
Yeah. Deed always goes, oh, by the way, you're going to teach in 10 minutes.
It's the same thing every time. You should be prepared.
I know. I just like ribbing you.
It's like me going, hey, Fred, you're speaking on coaching and lifetime, care. You ready? Oh, no, I'm not ready. I have to prepare.
Yep.
Yeah, that wouldn't happen.
Right. See, that's what I'm saying, Fred. I mean, it's like Joe to get him to teach on his own case study in his own company. He needs time.
Well, I don't want to be self-serving. I just like an independent person doing the presentation for me.
Yeah, I got you.
No, but I'll be there. So it's going to be exciting. So I'm looking forward to it. The week long is always a blast because you literally see the doctors who have never been, a lot of them have been practicing a long time. They come in, most of them are very timid, at the very beginning.
Yeah.
And then
the party at the house.
Yeah. And then by like Tuesday, they're already completely different people. By Friday, it's like they're so on fire so eager to go back to practice for all those
unity in the group. Yeah. Like they're one group. It's like one person. It's not a bunch of individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big family is what it is. So, it's like coming home when I come out to those basic annuals. So it's great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's kind of like that series Naked and Afraid. They show up and they're a little bit scared, but by the end, they're all huddling together because the test is coming up.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love doing it. Yeah. All right, guys.
Wonderful. That would be it.
We'll chat soon.
Yes.
All right. Peace. Thanks for hanging with us, crowd.
All right. We'll see you next time.